Welcome to Introduction to Ellen White. I'm your host, Eddie Shaw. This is the first episode in the series. In this series, I will be discussing the life of Ellen White and her writings. This is for anyone that would want to know more about Ellen White, not only for Seventh-day Adventists. Many Seventh-day Adventists know about her, but do not understand her story or her writings. Hopefully these videos will help guide you. This video will be an introduction to her writings. I will talk about my own personal story, and then we'll talk about some principles in reading her writings. We will finish with some writings that are beneficial to everyone, not only Seventh-day Adventists. My story. I converted to Seventh-day Adventism from another Protestant denomination. I was introduced to Ellen White my first day in church. I was okay with a prophet as long as she was not held higher than Scripture. In the years that followed, I learned about the specific SDA doctrines and would hear people quote Ellen White from time to time. I had even read some of the great controversy. It was a way to get my mind off of smoking and help me overcome the habit. After I was baptized, I was happy to be a part of the church and would feel good when someone would quote Ellen White in a sermon. I would also hear people quote her about different subjects. No one had talked to me about her or her writings. I did not know about her life or the types of writings that she had done. 5 years after my baptism, I still knew very little about her. It wasn't until I felt God calling on me to a different life, to honor Him and help spread His word, that I was led to Andrews University. Now I would be required to read Ellen White's books and learn about her. Since learning much more about her life and ministry, I wonder why the church does not teach more about Ellen White. They quote her a lot and use her to support specific topics. Does someone use tobacco? What did Ellen White say about it? Does someone eat meat? What did Ellen White say about it? We need to know who Ellen White was, and we need to know how to read her writings. There are certain things to keep in mind when reading Ellen White. These 6 statements will help you when you read Ellen White. Number 1, focus. Our focus is to understand Ellen White on her own terms. Don't read anything into her writings that is not there. Number 2, the center versus the edges. Focus on the things that are central to her writings, not things that she mentions only once or twice. When people prove a point by these isolated statements from the edges of her thoughts, they often misquote or misunderstand. Number 3, the universal versus the specific. We need to look at the things she wrote and decide if it is a universal principle or specific instruction to one person. Number 4, the writer's intent versus the reader's interpretation. What did she mean? Don't try to justify things with her writings, but let them speak for themselves. Number 5, the rule versus the principle. Is the instruction a general guideline or a rule for a specific situation? Number 6, Scripture. She pointed out things in Scripture. She did not want to be the final authority on Scripture. Study Scripture for yourself and use her as a guide to inform your own understanding. Ellen White's writings. Ellen White wrote a lot of books. It is hard to decide where to start. You may also say that you are not an Adventist and do not know Adventist doctrines. Here are some books that you can start with that would be a blessing to anyone who believes in Scripture. First is Steps to Christ. This is a small book on the Christian experience of salvation. And then we have books about Jesus, The Desire of Ages, an exposition on the life and teachings of Christ. Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing. Ellen White's presentation on the lessons Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount. Christ Object Lessons. The parables of Jesus and their lessons. Next we have books from the Conflict of the Ages series. Patriarchs and Prophets. The story of the struggle between God and Satan from the rebellion in heaven through the reign of David. Then we have prophets and kings. Picks up the story with the reign of Solomon and continues through the end of the Old Testament. Next is the desire of ages. The conflict reaches its climax in the life of Jesus at the cross. Acts of the Apostles traces the struggle between good and evil in the book of Acts through John's revelation. Then the Great Controversy begins with the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, runs through the course of church history, and ends with events predicted in Scripture. Finally, we have education and ministry of healing. These set forth Ellen White's philosophy and teachings on education and health. Finally, I have a challenge for everyone. Read Steps to Christ. Leave a comment about it. That way we can start a discussion about the books and learn more about salvation. We have looked at some of the writings of Ellen White. I'm looking forward to the comments on our challenge. Next time we will look at the life of Ellen White and discuss some resources you can learn more about her.